Today, we're pulling back the curtain on a deeply unsettling chapter of scientific history. It's a story that connects one of the brilliant founders of quantum physics directly to the Third Reich and to the origin of a war fought not on a battlefield, but inside the human mind itself. Let's get into it. Okay, so our journey starts here with the book Battle Space of Mind. It digs deep into the controversial world of what it calls neuroweapons. That's technology specifically designed to target the human brain. And as you can imagine, the book traces the roots of this idea to some very dark and surprising places. And right here, this is the bombshell claim at the heart of it all. The book puts forward this incredible assertion that one of the co-founders of quantum mechanics, a pillar of modern physics, was not only a dedicated Nazi, but that his scientific work allegedly laid the groundwork for neurowarfare. This is a name you might learn in physics class, but you definitely don't hear this part of the story. So you have to ask, right? How does a figure so important to how we understand the very fabric of the universe get so deeply tangled up in the most horrifying history of the 20th century? That's the question we're going to unpack. It's a wild story of science, power, and a legacy that, according to this book, is still with us today. So let's start with the man himself, Pascual Jordan. And what you find is this really profound and, frankly, disturbing paradox. He was an absolute genius, a truly brilliant scientist who was also a passionate believer in the ideology of the Third Reich. In this slide just lays that contrast out so clearly. On the one hand, you have the celebrated scientist, a guy who helped build the foundations of quantum mechanics, a true pioneer. And on the other hand, you have the propagandist, an avowed Nazi who championed totalitarian rule. The book's main argument, though, is that these weren't two different people. They were one and the same. And that right there is the crucial point. Jordan didn't have a work life and a political life. He actively tried to fuse them together. He saw his groundbreaking physics as a way to justify Nazi ideology and as a powerful tool to advance the goals of the authoritarian state. For him, the laboratory and the Reich were two sides of the same coin. So how in the world does quantum physics connect to this kind of ideology? It sounds pretty far-fetched. Well, the book really zeroes in on three key theories Jordan developed, and it argues these theories became the conceptual blueprints for what would later be called psychotronics, the attempt to influence the mind and body using technology. First up, you have his amplifier theory. Just imagine a tiny, random quantum event, like a single molecule changing its state, that then triggers this huge chain reaction that controls an entire organism. Jordan saw this as a scientific metaphor for the Führer principle, a single, all-powerful leader directing the masses. For him, biology was just proving his politics right. Next, there's something called target theory. This was a method he worked on for understanding exactly how radiation could hit these tiny targets inside a living thing, like genes, to change how it functions. The book argues this was a critical step toward the idea of remotely influencing biological systems, which is, a core concept in neural warfare. And finally, we've got molecular resonance. Jordan came up with this theory that identical molecules have a kind of attractive force between them. Now, it turns out he was wrong about how this applied to genetics. But, and this is a huge but, the book alleges that the basic idea didn't just die. It claims it was later picked up and repurposed by Soviet researchers who were exploring ways to influence biological targets from a distance. A scientist, even a brilliant one, doesn't just work in a vacuum. The book makes it really clear that Jordan was deeply embedded in the Nazi scientific and military establishment. He had a whole network that gave his ideas the fertile ground they needed to grow. And this timeline really shows just how deep in he was. He starts writing propaganda in 29. By the 30s, he's collaborating with top geneticists. In 1941, he's actually proposing a massive state-run quantum biology program to serve the Reich. And by the peak of the war, he's landed a position at the German Navy's secret research office. He was no outsider. He was at the very heart of the system. And he was not working alone. At the prestigious Kaiser Wilhelm Brain Institute, his collaborators included a future Nobel laureate, a top radiation specialist, and a leading geneticist. So this wasn't some fringe project happening in a basement. This was cutting-edge biological research, fully funded and supported by the Nazi state. So, what happened to all these radical ideas after the Third Reich fell? The book proposes a direct and, for a long time, hidden chain of transmission. And it turns out, those collaborators we just mentioned, they're the critical link. So how did these ideas actually survive the fall of the Nazis? Well, the book traces this very specific path. First, the theories are developed in Berlin. Then, after the war, key scientists from Jordan's circle, like Carl Zimmer, are captured and taken to the Soviet Union to work on their nuclear program. It's through them, the book claims, that Jordan's ideas about resonance and remote influence bled into Soviet military research, where they were then adapted for the Cold War. And this is really the book's most explosive conclusion, that there is a direct, traceable line from Pascual Jordan's politically motivated quantum biology all the way to the shadowy world of Cold War psychotronics. It argues that the ghost of this Nazi physicist was essentially haunting the secret labs of the superpowers for decades. So what do we take away from all this? The story of Pascual Jordan, as presented in this book, is just a stark reminder that science is never separate from the people and the societies that create it. It really forces us to ask some tough questions about where our knowledge comes from and what hidden histories might be buried behind the science we use every single day. It's proof that even the most brilliant ideas can cast a very long and very dark shadow.